right, so welcome everyone. My name is Salah Khalifi. I am the learning facilitator and organizer for Agile Nova. Thank you for joining us in your lunch hour here, depending on where you are. I am really excited to have Luke with us here today. I read his phenomenal keynote talk last year at Agile 2015, and I thought it would be very intriguing to bring him to present to our group here. So without further ado, I'll pass it on to Luke and take it away.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm honored to be here. I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen, and that way we can go ahead and get to work here. So let me share my screen. And then this is a very intimate crowd, which is really fun. I mean, it's a lot different to do a webinar with a small handful of people that we can have a more intimate relationship with than 2,200 people in a huge room. So if you need to stop me, say something and chat something, and let's talk together about what's happening, because we should make this something that's more engaging and interactive to the extent that we can. Okay, everyone, let's get to it. In 2009, as many of us are who are consultants, I found myself on a plane, and I was in the exit row, and on that plane ride, I had the really good fortune to sit next to Kim Willesh, and at the time, she was the Director of Economic Development and Strategy for the city of San Jose. So of course, she's talking about her job, and I'm talking about innovation games, and I've got a book, and I hand her a book, and we're getting to talk to each other, and she's starting to tell me about some of these, some of the challenges that they're having in the city about budgeting and prioritization. And at that moment, I want you to imagine like trying to tease out what happens in your brain in a snap of a flash of a microsecond. So it's like bullet time at high speed. So Kim starts to talk about how the city is facing a $100 million budget deficit, and they're having significant challenges. And I think to myself, hey, we help companies prioritize roadmaps and backlogs and stuff all the time. We can help the city. So because she said, Luke, we're $100 million in debt. And I'm like, WTF? And, oh my God. And, we know how to do these things of prioritizing features and backlogs and technical debt. And I say, why not prioritize the city budget? So I said, we can help. And then I went, oh no, because I've never prioritized the city budget. And this is hard. And it's $100 million. And, a lot of us, we're worried about our backlogs and our features and prioritizing which epic comes first. I don't think many of us on this phone call have had the gripping decision of a $100 million debt. I mean, just really let that sink in. And this isn't the federal government of the United States, which doesn't care about the debt because they just print more money. This is a city that has to balance itself. So they have this community budgeting process that Kim starts to telling me about with Mayor Chuck Reed, and where they bring citizens into the room. And I'm thinking, hey, this is great, right? I'm an Agilist. This is customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and they're bringing in the cities, and I love this. And so I'm super happy. I'm like, Kim, this is great. This is super happy. And she says, well, this is you know a lot about collaboration, and this Agile thing sounds really cool. Why don't you come and see what we do? And I'm like, okay. So this is in January now. It's 2010, and this is a video. It's a scratchy video, but it's a public meeting. And you can see there's Kim and there's me. And if you look at my body language, I might look a little like both studious and perhaps a little dismayed. And I'm like, this is not what I'm thinking. And so what happened is they gave everyone a roll of nickels. And what they did was they had 5 glass jars in the front of the room, and they had 5 spending priorities. And the idea behind the spending priorities was that you would put the nickels in the jar of where you wanted to spend. And this was a survey. It wasn't collaborative because there was no conversation. There was no interaction. There was no trade-offs. There was no discussions. And surveys suck. And so the smartest citizens just, kept a roll of nickels because, might as well get a roll of nickels at a public meeting. And so I went back to Kim and I said, Kim, let's make this a collaborative experience because you're not really getting the actionable data that you need. So now it's in the middle of 2010. And I said, look, we really want to make this collaborative. Now, keep in mind the time scale that I'm dealing with. And by the way, in the chat, I tend to get pretty excited about this. So if I'm going too fast, let me know. I get pretty excited about this stuff. And so I said to Kim, let's make this a collaborative experience. And she's like, okay, well, how do you do that? Well, we need a goal. We need some kind of a field of play, a room. We need resources. And, of course, we need to understand the rules of the interaction of the collaboration. Finally, we need a way of keeping track of things. And then we have to have the citizens want to come and do this. And, of course, I just described a game. And if you think about collaboration and you think about games and you're familiar with innovation games, you know that a serious game is a collaborative experience, and a collaborative experience has all the elements of a game. So from an abstract or a theory perspective, games and collaborations are isomorphic. All of these presents exist. Now, we have a lot of games, right? Ranging from bridge and checkers to, global thermonuclear war, which would not be a game that we would want to play. We'd all lose. So what we know is that a serious game is a game designed for primary purpose other than pure entertainment. So we have lots of games, most of them entertaining. And what we're doing in Agile, and people like Alistair Coburn have talked about, product development being a collaborative game, the work with innovation games, the game storming community, all of these things are ways to engage. Now, what this means is that games are the ideal collaboration tool. They enable you to collaborate towards a goal with clearly defined rules of engagement and resources, etc. Now, we have a lot of games, right? And if you're familiar with innovation games or game storming or some of the other stuff, there's Product Box, which helps you discover unmet needs. There's Remember the Future, which is a goal-driven planning process. There's Spiderweb, which helps you understand relationships. There's Start Your Day, which helps you understand patterns of use. And of course, Speedboat is one of the more common games used in the Agile community for retrospectives or to identify impediments. Now, the trick is mapping the game to the problem so that you can solve the problem you're facing. Now, these are not the problems that the city was facing. The city was facing a budgeting problem. And we have a game that some of you may have played called Buy a Feature, where we take 12 to 20 items described in terms of benefits and costs, and we give 5 to 8 players a limited budget, and they buy what they want. This is used for backlog prioritization, epic prioritization, project portfolio prioritization, resource planning, lots of uses of this technique, and we wanted to try and figure out how to take it to the next step, if you will, for the city. And so remember, the city's $100 million in budget. This is pretty daunting because the city's broke. There's no money to spend. So we had to mod the game. And if you're a gamer of any kind, you know about game modding. So what I did was I modded the game. I said, look, these are the green sheets. And the green sheets represent items that the citizens can purchase. And the red sheets represent funding cuts or taxes that you can raise to get money. And the idea behind the rules of the game was you had to have unanimous agreement on an item here to get the money here to spend here. And that's a very hard rule because you had to have a unanimous agreement at the table on the red sheet items, which made it a very interesting interaction model. Now, to give you an idea of the kind of gravitas of the items, again, Agile teams get wrapped around and get all worked up around, which epic do I do? But these people were dealing with things like, do I want to attack anti-graffiti or the Children's Health Initiative? Or do I want to trade children's health for more park rangers? These are all significant issues in San Jose. And for raising money, do I want to eliminate the police helicopter or remove a person from the fire truck from 5 to 4 or delay opening a community center that's needed? So these citizens are grappling with really important items more broadly in a process called participatory budgeting. Now, we did our first event. We assembled a team. If you're in the Agile community, you might see some faces you know. This is Monica Yap. She works at Solutions IQ, terrific Agilist. Over here, we've got Tom Grant. He's in the DC area. This is Jerry Kirk. Chris Sims and Dennis Britton are over here. Sherry Levin is over here. So lots of important people. And then some people outside of the Agile community. Just if you're in the Agile community, David Chilcott. But Deb Colden is a strategy consultant. Stephen Kwan is a professor at San Jose State. So there's lots of really interesting people just helping out. And I want to stress to everyone on the phone call, this was done pro bono. All of these people donated countless hours of time to pull this off. Now, to understand how the event worked, and if you've not done Buy a Feature in person, it's very dynamic and very energetic and very fast. You know, over here we've got Brett McCallan, who's our facilitator. The participants were San Jose residents, members of the who are predominantly leaders in the neighborhood associations, the youth commissions, and then subject matter experts were available across the different parts of the game. Now, when questions of substance were raised, the subject matter experts would answer them. So this was Fire Chief McDonald, who was in the room, and these were the results. And you can start to see that there's some really interesting things here, that the San Jose residents chose pavement maintenance over libraries, and that's a pretty radical thought. When Mayor Reed came to me and said, "Look, this is really radical. Is this data accurate?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is what the 12 tables chose." And he said, "Well, Luke, in San Jose, we need pavement maintenance more than we need libraries. But normally, when a politician says, I want to invest in pavement over libraries, there's a Friends of Libraries that comes out in force and writes newspaper articles and editorials, but there's no Friends of Pavement." And that phrase really stuck with me. It's like I felt like I was a technology person talking about infrastructure. Everyone wants our systems to be scalable and secure and maintainable and easy to use, but it's rare that we have friends of infrastructure in software. And so I resonated with that statement. Now, in 2011, the budget games had a direct impact. We had reductions in the fire department staffing. They did reductions in the police department staffing. They delayed some services. And they funded a few proposals, but mostly they saved money. They found a way to save money. Now, what we learned was that techniques that we use in person and online in business to prioritize features, buy a feature online, buy a feature in person, they can in fact be used to prioritize the city budget. And the message here is you can use Agile collaboration frameworks to accomplish much bigger goals. And my hope is that the Agile community over time, because it is a community that cares about collaboration as a means of problem solving, will expand its horizon and its perspective and start to really focus on societal issues. Now, the citizens, of course, we did a little retrospective because we're Agile, and the citizens in the retrospective said, "We love this, we want to do it again, and can we add ideas, and what if we wanted to add a sales tax instead of other taxes?" So in 2012, we did it again. And we added some stuff. We did add a sales tax. We added more sophistication in terms of the process of buying one or none. We did add the ability for tables to add funding proposals, new funding proposals. And the result, if I can play this video, I'm going to go to my browser and play. Go to the YouTube. Sorry, I had to reboot my computer because Microsoft was very helpful in making me restart my system a few minutes before this began. So you'll just have to give me a sec here. Let's see, is that the one I want? I think so. Okay, here you go.
we have to make really tough decisions when we're allocating funds or cutting services sometimes. And knowing what the community thinks is important, what the community's priorities are, is just critical to making good decisions.
This particular approach of using Continuo and really creative game type environment has been part of our process for the last 4 years, and it's been an invaluable way for the City Council to get input from the community.
In the background, you can hear the buzz and the excitement and the engagement that happens when we come together to solve these kinds of problems.
I found to be a very good exercise in learning exactly how the city functions, where the money comes from, and from what sources and who needs the money and how much they need.
We have $68 million to spend.
$68 million doesn't even touch the police budget. It doesn't even help.
Not very much.
The issues don't necessarily only affect adults because we use things like community centers and the parks and the libraries.
It is a viable way for the community to come together to really set priorities.
It's more than increased availability of recreation and programming. It's safety. It's safety. It's a safe house for the youth in our area. That's what it's all about.
This room was full of people who have opinions and they're not afraid to express them. It was a great experience. It got a little tense at times, but we all came together, everybody at our table.
Yeah, and how much do we have left in our allotment?
Somebody needs to cough up $10 million if you want it.
That's another $1 million.
So another thing I like about this process, especially the online piece of it, is all you have to be is a resident of this city to be participant.
You're explaining to other people why it's important to you.
Silicon Valley innovation is more than just chips and software. It's this process itself.
It was really good because we were allowed to discuss, and I really saw the viewpoints of their issues and their priorities, and they saw my priorities, and I think we came to a really good decision at the end.
It's very helpful to us to know that what we're doing reflects the values and priorities of the community.
The feedback you give us will be part of the decision-making process that the council will use in adopting our budget this year.
Okay, so that wasn't exactly the 2012 video. I meant to show the 2012 video, but it was the 2014 video. But you got the sense of it. I thought I'd just let it run through once I realized I had the wrong one. But you guys get the sense of the energy and the ability to bring the community together and just a lot of the excitement that's going on. Now, in 2012, the other thing that happened was I decided to form a nonprofit so that I could really expand and grow this and make sure that everyone knows that our intention is to be a nonpartisan a voice to help people become involved. And what we ended up with was Lisa Adkins gave us the name Every Voice Engaged. And many of you know Lisa. She's brilliant. She's fantastic in the Agile community. And of course, I just have a big thank you for Lisa for helping out with that, giving, naming it. And for those of you who are linguists, you know that naming things are really important. Now, in 2013, we expanded. We went to what's called the Rotunda, which is even bigger, and we got more people involved. We also expanded overseas. Jürgen de Smet over at Co-Learning, a great partner, he started doing budget games in Kortrijk, Belgium, his city. He pointed out that Americans would do better if we had the same kind of beverages that they have in their events. I don't disagree, but they do things a little differently in Europe in politics. And he pointed out that some of the beverages may help smooth the negotiations. Now, in 2014, we continued to grow and expand. We went online. This is an example of what our core interface looks like, where you can start to see, what's funded and the interactions. And now I really want to talk about this because the Agile community has this strong statement about, you have to be co-located and you have to have everyone in the same place. And I don't know about y'all, but even in my company, even though I like to think we're pretty agile, we have a distributed development team. We've got developers in Europe, we've got developers in New York, we've got developers here in the Bay Area, because we want to hire the right talent. And sometimes the right talent lives in a different part of the world or a different part of the country. And if we've got to kind of get past this. And so, if you look at what these residents said, David's like, look, this was interesting. And then a woman, Gene, this is better than the in-person game. So the facilitator, well, what did you like about it more? Well, Gene, it's not noisy and I could hear everyone. And David, it came down to the facts, no body language, no prejudices. And so, the Agile community needs to realize that while there is great value in having presence, sometimes body language body language isn't always positive, and having, people who may not speak English as fluently as others being discounted in the political process is not what we want. And so we want to have every voice engaged. And so, you get these pointy-haired managers, all teams should be co-located, but we need distributed teams to scale. And it's kind of goofy because we need both. We need in-person, we need online, we need multi-dimensional collaboration. So we need the yes and even when the and conflicts with the dogma or consulting income of a particular consultant. So now what we've learned is not that we can use Agile frameworks, is that we can repeatedly use Agile frameworks. And we've done budget games now with the city of San Jose for 5 years. We continue to expand the program and do more work with San Jose. Now, eventually, the citizens came to us and said, we're tired of cutting our trees. We're tired of cutting our budget. We want to grow. So can you help our city grow? For those of you in the chat who are familiar with innovation games, you, of course, said, well, do we have that question for products? How should we help our product go? And could helping our product grow help our city grow? And the answer is, well, yeah, you can shape and make shrubs do anything you want. This is from the Ferrari factory, the F1 Ferrari, McLaren. I'm sorry, not Ferrari, but McLaren. And so we have a framework called Prune the Product Tree, where we represent time horizons and tasty features and nutritious infrastructure, and we talk about how these promote growth. So we said, look, we know how to build roadmaps in an agile way, in a collaborative way with Prune the Product Tree. Maybe we could help the city do this. So, and of course, if you do a search on the web, you can find a lot of different examples of Prune the Product Tree in person and online on the web of agile teams finding success with this. So we even did it with the Scrum Alliance, and we talked about how we had multiple teams online doing work with the Scrum Alliance. So we had a lot of confidence that we could do this. So we did, in fact, do this. We did an in-person and online set of forums for the Great Neighborhoods Project to identify how to help them grow. Now, what we found was that product road mapping can be applied to city road mapping. And you can use, again, agile collaboration frameworks to accomplish bigger goals. Now, I've got a question, and people put this into the chat log, please. So I do know that there are humans involved as opposed to just everyone being a bot. So humor me and chat something. What happens when you play Monopoly and you land on free parking? Well, Colleen says nothing, but Colleen, is that how you play it? Or do you change the rules somehow?
I don't know what the rules are. That's just how we play it.
You play it so that nothing happens. What about other people?
It looks like Patricia has a different answer.
Yeah, Patricia says, I get the money in the middle. So let's look at the rules of Monopoly, and then let's talk about modding the game. it turns out that according to the official rules of Monopoly, when you land on free parking, nothing happens. But most families, when they're playing Monopoly, when you land on free parking, you get the money in the middle. And the money in the middle is usually the money paid for in bank fees and things like that. Now, what that does is that, paradoxically, it expands the money supply and perpetuates the game. Meaning, if you play Monopoly by the rules, you can get a game done in 30 to 40 minutes. If you play Monopoly by the many modifications that people add, like taking free money or landing on free parking and gets the money in the middle, you actually extend the game without realizing it. But that's a good thing because socially we want to play. And so you might say that when you mod a game, you are a game butt. When you're not, because you're not following the rules of the game. Now this is important because what I want everyone to realize is that when you change a game, you become a game designer. So I want everyone to stand up, and I'm going to stand up. I want you to put your hands on your hips, and I want you to say, I am a game designer. Go ahead and do it. I want to hear you.
I am a game designer.
Hi, I'm the game designer.
Awesome. Now, you may think that's corny, but Amy Cootie has got a lot of research from Harvard that shows that body language and self-image can determine outcome. And so she does a lot of work with girls. I have 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls. And so I'm kind of keen on making sure my women in my family have good role models and feel, equal and strong. And this is a way to do it. So now let's look at Scrum. And Scrum theoretically is a game because it says the definitive guy. Oh yeah, Darby says, I've seen Amy Cootie's TED Talk. It's worth watching. So if Scrum is a game, then what happens is I tell people that I want you guys to realize that Scrum butts unite. Change the rules of Scrum. And so what's happening is there's all these little Scrum people running around the Agile community saying, you're not doing Scrum right because you're not following some specific rule. Well, if Scrum is a game and games are modded and we're all game designers, then we're all Scrum butts. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a Scrum butt. Scrum butt says you do not need a roadmap. All you need is a product backlog. I disagree. I have a roadmap for my product. I think roadmaps are helpful. And so I want you to be a method modder. And I say to everyone, keep calm and Scrum mod on. And so now the question becomes, business frameworks can solve social problems, and how far can we push the mods? How far can we push this problem or push this approach? Well, let's look at a school system project. Let's say you were going to do a bond to help your schools, and you wanted to use by a feature about hiring grant writers and looking at renewable energy and energy savings projects and understanding these results. Well, this is really great. But if you look at this in detail, it's a different kind of question than how do we deal with school overcrowding. In this question, you're trying to figure out how do I allocate funds. In this question, you're figuring out what are my options. And I want everyone to think about this. If I walk up to you and I say, here's a set of projects, what do we fund? It's very economically driven. Over here, when I say, how do I deal with school overcrowding? I don't yet know how to spend money because I don't yet know what my options are, and I don't know how I feel about the options that are presented. Well, the first kind of problem is called a technical problem. They're like budgets and roadmaps, and they're relatively clearly defined. They have shorter and often repeating time horizons, usually on 1 year or less boundaries. Failure is not considered catastrophic in these situations, and they're very knowledge and economics driven. Now, the other kind of problem is called a wicked problem, and an example would be urban planning, like in Los Altos School District. These problems have long time horizons. It takes many years to figure this out. There's a lot of inertia that keeps us following the same path, but if you continue to follow the path you're on, you will in fact fail. You just don't know when. And it's hard to change because you've got multiple actors and it's values driven instead of economic driven. Now, these kinds of problems exist at all levels of society. We've got, urban planning. In California, we have the drought. And, we're doing exactly what we shouldn't do in California, which is we had a good year of rain, and now people are relaxing water restrictions. It's exactly the wrong thing to do. We should be looking at the drought from a long-term perspective and starting really to build out that necessary infrastructure. We've got problems at the national level in the United States. How will we deal with healthcare or immigration reform? And globally, we have problems about how do we educate our children for the jobs in the new economy? How do we deal with a rising epidemic of prescription drug abuse? And what do we do about obesity, which is just growing and rampant and frightening? Because I don't want to have our children around the world inherit a lower quality of life because they're, bluntly, they're fat. And they've got diabetes, which is all preventable disease. So I don't want that. I doubt anyone else on this phone call wants that too. So how are we going to deal with these things? Well, to deal with these wicked problems, our first line of defense is to say, well, how do businesses solve these kind of wicked problems? And are we any good at it? And so the first question is, do we have wicked problems in business? And I contend we do. My software is late is a wicked problem because it's got multiple actors and it's complex and it's got if I don't address it, it could be catastrophic. I might have massive technical debt. I might have low adoption rates for my software, or I might want to scale Agile. How do I really do that? And when you look at this, you might think, these are hard problems, and they really are. So again, we can help, but can we? This is interesting. For the research in wicked problems in business, we find that we don't really do a very good job. 50% of our strategic business decisions fail. And this is out of research from Paul Nutt, who looked at a 20-year study of 400 massive decisions. I'm not talking about the small ones. I'm talking about the 100 million to multi-billion-dollar decisions. And they're failing 50% of the time. We find that unacceptable. So is there a way to get there, to improve the process? Well, to improve the process, we have to understand what are the root causes of the problem. And what Paul Nutt found was that business decisions fail because we don't create options, we don't assess the actions associated with our decisions, we don't consider the drawbacks, meaning an action and a drawback pair form a causal system, so we don't look at the system, and we don't deliberate because we're not talking with each other, meaning we don't collaborate. So the question now becomes, maybe we should look the other way. Maybe we should look in the social sector, which is facing wicked problems all the time, and see if there's a path to solving technical problems in business. Well, at South by Southwest a few years ago, I was giving a talk about budget games, and I met Amy Lee from the Kettering Foundation. And Kettering studies what it takes to make democracy work as it should. And Amy told me about their process called a deliberative forum. It's a process whereby citizens evaluate strategies for attacking a problem, the actions that must be taken, and the drawbacks. And I'm like, wait a minute, this matches Paul Nutt's research. So let's look at it from the perspective of a social problem in California, a drought. We could create and capture more water, we could increase conservation, or we could modernize governance. And you'll notice that there's always two choices where two choices are kind of in opposition, and then there's a third choice that looks at it from just a different perspective. Now, this is my strategies for attacking the drought. Let's look at the actions and drawbacks. The actions for capturing or creating more water could be building a desal plant or changing the levees or building reservoirs. The drawbacks of each of these include $1 billion in cost, but really bad wastewater for the plant, a fragile ecosystem, and I could be harming the agriculture. And finally, the reservoirs cost a lot of money, but don't create a big increase. So when I look at this, it's really challenging because what's happening here is I've got things that I might want. I might say, oh, one of these things looks like a good idea, but will I accept the drawback? So what Kettering asked us to do is build them a platform to help scale deliberation. So we built Common Ground for Action, and this is just a couple of screenshots. what you do is when you join the forum, you are presented with actions and then you rank them. I think we should, I'm conflicted, I think we should not. So in the strategy called create and capture more water, I think we should increase the production and use of recycled water. That's an action I could take. Now it's got a drawback. The drawback, if you read it with me, is some people have a hard time getting over the ick factor, meaning the recycled water is toilet to tap. I go to the bathroom, I run the water through, and I put it out my tap. And some people can't get over what's called the ick factor. Now, if you couldn't live with this, you would rank this. As an engineer, I trust that the wastewater will be treated properly. Maybe it's an unfounded trust, but nonetheless I do. And so I'm willing to live with it. What we then do is we create a visualization of the collaborating group's opinion about how they feel about a problem. And then by looking at each of the strategies, I can identify where there is a foundation for action and which actions are not supported by the group. So what we learned in this forum was that California should invest in new desal plants. People were not supportive of this. But over here, if I were to look at these other items, we would find where there is common ground for legislative action. So what we find is that we've got these frameworks that are attacking things like school capacity and drought can be used to attack the wicked problems we're facing in the Agile community. And the trick is what's called the framing. So let's look at a few framings like technical debt. One way to look at technical debt is I want to rewrite the code. And that's what the developers will say. But if you start to say, I want to rewrite the code, the smart business people is, well, maybe we shouldn't write code at all. Maybe we should buy some software. But an alternative way of looking at technical debt, and what I have come to believe is that there's actually less technical debt in the Agile community, and there's more a lack of collaboration on how do I map out changes to my system that manage it. I'm working with a few large clients right now, and they keep telling me they have all this technical debt. They don't have a lot of technical debt. They have some natural evolution of their architecture that their product managers and product owners were not collaborating with the development team to map out those changes. And so it's becoming an issue where the only way developers can get things done is to say technical debt. What about scaling Agile? Well, one approach is, go hire a bunch of consultants and pay them millions of dollars for coaching fees and certification fees and things like that. Another approach is to say, hey, look, maybe we can retrospect our way to improving. This is a framework that we call top 5, worst 5, and maybe just by working on our own, we can figure things out. A final approach might be looking at the architecture of the system, because we know that architecture determines social communication patterns. And if your architecture is not designed for scale, it doesn't matter what your process is, because the architecture will eventually dominate the process. So maybe the non-intuitive way to get Agile scaling is to look at your architecture. So what we're finding is that business problems and collaboration frameworks used in business can attack social problems, and social problems and the collaboration frameworks developed there can help attack business problems. And there's this very virtuous cycle. By learning more frameworks, we learn more ways to solve problems. Now, the question becomes, what other kinds of problems can we tackle? And I'm tired of looking at problems alone. I'd like to think about what other kind of opportunities can we create. Well, let's look at retrospectives. The Agile Manifesto quote says, at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. The Agile Manifesto never said run a retro every sprint. And in fact, what we find is that teams are running retrospectives too frequently because they're not changing enough. Now, a common retrospective technique is speedboat. These are examples of speedboat and scale, but we know that in-person doesn't scale. So if we're going to scale Agile, if you're adopting a large organization approach to agility, then you need to scale. So the way we scale retrospectives is we have each team do an online version of Speedboat. Then we download all the results and analyze them. And this is the results from BWin Party, where we did 42 Scrum teams, about 350 people. Now, roll that in your head. you know, think about, and I'd love to see it in the chat log. What's the largest retrospective that you've ever done? Usually people will tell me it's 30 to 50 people. Keep in mind that this is a retrospective of 350 people with each team doing a retrospective. This is pretty amazing stuff. Now, by looking at this, we're able to identify patterns, and in those patterns, we found that the teams were doing well, but the opportunities for the enterprise was, in Diana Larson's words, the soup, and we could attack a fewer number of bigger problems to get a better organizational impact. So now we found that we can use Agile collaboration frameworks to accomplish much bigger goals. Maybe, for example, we could do a retrospective at the city level or at the neighborhood level or at the state level and say, how are we doing? Because when we stop retrospecting, we stop improving. Well, maybe I'm going too big. Maybe I'm focusing on the world and I should be focusing on our families, the smallest and most important social unit of all time. Well, Kathleen Grant and Laura Osborne are two therapists who have taken innovation games and adapted them for our work. If you're familiar with my work, then you know that this is 2020, and you know that this picture down here is Remember the Future. How do I achieve the goal of getting money management? What are my priorities for recovery? And so, again, we're finding this common theme. So now what? We've only got a few minutes left, and I want to close and open up for questions. So now what? Well, if you look at what I'm talking about, you might think, oh God, Luke wants me to be this collaboration superhero. I don't know if I can do that. I'm not the smartest, richest man in the world. I'm not a god from Asgard, nor am I a genetically engineered gamma-rayed green monster. I'm not capable of doing what Luke is asking me to do. But I want you to look at the Avengers closely, because there's two Avengers that are not green superpowered people. We've got basically a badass ballerina and a guy without any fear who's pretty good with a bow and arrow. And those people are you, because this is the people that are helping in San Jose. These are normal people who are leveraging collaboration frameworks to make successful things happen. And this is really powerful and really profound. And just by engaging in a few frameworks, we can make an amazing change. So my request to you is to play 2 games to change the world, because every game you play at work creates an opportunity for collaborative behavior to be realized as the correct behavior to solve problems. Now, many of you are going to work environments where running up to your boss and saying, let's play, is probably not going to work. So I'm going to teach you now how to say, let's play a game in the workplace. And I want you to remember what I said earlier about the components of a game. It's got a goal, it's got rules, etc. So you're not going to walk up to your boss and say, boss, I want to play games. You're going to walk up to your boss and say, boss, I want to engage my team in a goal-directed activity with clearly defined rules of engagement. Progress towards achievement of the goal will be tracked through clearly communicated status indicators. Now, you might be thinking this is pretty good. I got to snazz it up. Let me help you. Add the word strategic. Your boss is going to love it. Make sure they know it's not fun, so change the activity to exercise. And to be super agilely cool, don't call it a status indicator. Call it an information radiator, because information radiators are what we love in Agile. Now, if you do this, because I live in Silicon Valley, I have to create a nonsensical asymptotic curve of growth. So if you were to do this, and all the people at the Agile conference did this, over a 25-year period, we would have the 200 million people that we need to change the world. And you need to do this, and you need to help us change the world, because in fact, the world does need you. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Luke. This is great, very intriguing, and a lot of ideas to think about. Actually, my question was going to be that, you know, the game, you know, the connotation that comes with the word game, and you just tackle that. So I want to open it up for others to chime in if they have thoughts or questions. I know we have about 5 minutes to wrap it up.
Okay, I see Lisa Nelson says, when talking about co-located ticketing, you said we need a multi-something. Didn't catch the rest of it. It's what I call multi-dimensional collaboration, Lisa. And what I mean by multi-dimensional collaboration is a good framework is in person and online. It can be done by one team or many teams. It can be played internally with employees or externally with customers. So that's what I mean by multi-dimensional collaboration. And Salah, is that the right way to say your name, Salah?
Salah. Yep.
Salah, if possible, I'd love to have the participants in the webinar today. If you send me their emails, I'll give everyone a trial account that they could try out our platform with.
Great. Yep. So, or you can send me the link. I'll post it. I don't usually collect emails, so if you send me the link, I'll post it on the Meetup platform. That way, you also have more people who haven't attended can also join.
All right, that sounds great.
So I guess one final question is basically where I know you have there's Innovation Games website. There's a lot of information, but as far as the collaboration and what we talked about today, is there other resources that you recommend?
Yeah, let me. So there's 3 websites. Corporate is Continue.co. IG stuff is
Excellent. Okay.
all right. It was a pleasure to have everyone on board. Salah, thank you so much for hosting me and putting this all together. I just want to say thanks. I mean, because every chance I get the word out about collaboration at work and collaboration at scale. Oh, one more thing. I'm kicking off with the Scrum Alliance, a collaboration at scale webinar series, and I would invite everyone to come to the Scrum Alliance Collaboration at Scale webinar series. We're going to each month tackle a specific problem in Agile teams who are trying to scale, and we'll talk about multidimensional collaborative frameworks and how they attack that problem.
Thank you very much, Luke. I appreciate your time. I know you have a busy schedule, so I'm glad you were able to accommodate this. And what I'll do, I'll post the recording of this video. I'll send it to you and also post it on the Meetup, and can share the links with the group here.